Wait a minute. I gotta check if I'm even pronouncing this correctly. Nobody corrected me before, but if anyone's gonna correct me, they're gonna correct me now. Literal meaning, fork roasting. Well, if that doesn't get you going, then I don't know what will. So we're talking Char Siu, or Char Siu, Char Siu, or Char Siu. I've been brushing up to make sure that I was pronouncing it correctly, and I found it to be pronounced about 15,000 different ways, so yeah. Thankfully for you, today is the last day that I'm gonna be whining about it. You can vote for me for Best Food Video on Saveur Magazine. Make sure to go check it out. The link is in the description. It's free, it takes a second, scroll to the bottom, click it, and you can do it daily until the voting ends on October 18th. This is like the common associated Chinese barbecue pork that everybody knows and loves. Needs no introduction, so with that said, let's make this, shall we?
So to kick things off, we're gonna make our marinade. You're gonna start with 3 tablespoons or 37 grams of brown sugar, 1.5 teaspoons or 3 grams of Chinese 5-spice, 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of Shaoxing rice wine or sherry, but you know, obviously rice wine is the better choice, 1 tablespoon or 14 grams of dark soy sauce, regular's fine, but you know, 2 tablespoons or 38 grams of hoisin sauce, 1 tablespoon or 14 grams of fermented red bean curd or fermented regular black bean curd, but yeah. 1 teaspoon or 6 grams of sesame oil, and 2 teaspoons or 10 grams of fine sea salt. Now mix all that together. Now at this point we need to add that classic red color. Now hyper traditionally they would use sapan wood chips soaked in water, but for those of us who have trouble sourcing it, then you can absolutely use a little over 1/8 of a teaspoon of red food dye. If you don't like it, you can totally leave it out, it's optional. It will be a little bit salty, but don't worry, you need that. Next, take a 3-pound or 1,300 gram boneless pork shoulder, and we're gonna cut that into pieces, but not just any pieces. You can see me kind of contemplating how I wanna cut this. You see, it's important that the meat is flat, but not too flat. The thickness is going to kind of determine how the outside sort of candies with the marinade. So if it's too thick, you won't really get a great sort of red hue and that nice sort of caramelized outside. And if it's too thin, then you're going to overcook the crap out of it. So I would recommend cutting it into sort of flat pieces about 2 inches thick, as you see here. The key point being that all the pieces should be relatively similar in size so that they cook evenly. Now before you marinate your pork in this, make sure to measure out about 3 tablespoons or 44 milliliters of your marinade and set that aside in a container in the refrigerator. You're gonna need it on roasting day. But anyway, take your cut pork and place it in some sort of a baking dish and pour all of the remaining marinade all over, you know, give it a nice little massage, slap it around a little bit, just kind of squeeze those cheeks, you know, and don't know where I'm going with that. Anyway, just make sure that it gets totally coated and cover it with plastic wrap or whatever you got that's eco-friendly. And I know you guys are gonna yell at me for using plastic wrap again. Hey, please DM me if you've got some genuinely good choices, because beeswax is not doing it for me. Anyway, take your pork and marinate it in the fridge overnight or up to 2 days. Okay, so it's roasting day. Go ahead and preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit or 215 degrees Celsius. Now while that bad boy's preheating, you remember that marinade that we set aside? Well, I've got a task for it. So to that, you're gonna add 3 tablespoons or 44 milliliters of honey. Just mix that together until totally homogeneous and set that aside because that's gonna be your glaze. Then line a rimmed baking sheet with foil, and then place a rack that's fitted for the baking sheet on top of that. Then place your marinated pork on the rack. You know, this is a good roasting setup because it allows air to circulate around it, you know, all that good stuff. Also, I'm pretty sure that this is traditionally done over an open fire pit. If you've got one of those, then hey, go ahead and do it, but I'm trying to make this more accessible. Then place it in the oven and roast it for 20 minutes. Then flip that bad boy and roast it for another 20 minutes or until an internal temperature of 158 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 Celsius is reached. Then baste that side with the honey marinade, let it roast for 5 minutes, flip.
Damn it.
And then baste the other side and roast for an additional 5 minutes. You want to roast it until it gets nice and sort of caramelized and sticky and tacky. If it's not getting there, then you can always turn your broiler on to get that nice thick glaze. If you followed the pro tip earlier about the water in the bottom of the pan, then you shouldn't have a scorched bottom, and therefore you can mop up those drippings and brush them over your finished pork. And you get a beautifully ruby red glazed piece of meat. Then after that, you're done. Then all you gotta do is pull it out of the oven and let it rest for about 10 minutes or so, and then slice into it. Enjoy it however you want. You can enjoy it with some rice and bok choy, which is a pretty traditional way to enjoy it. To eat it any way that you want. But there's a very common way that this is eaten, which we will discuss in another video later this week. But you wanna know what we're gonna discuss now? B-roll.
guys, and that is it. So, we done good made that classic Chinese barbecue pork. This is really just the intro to what is to come. I actually planned to film bao today. What ended up happening was I was like, you know what? How could I possibly film bao without prior showing people how to make the barbecue pork that's then going to go in the bao? It just didn't feel right. To me, it felt like a disservice, which it would have been. So now we've got that in the hole, so I think you've got a pretty good idea of what's coming next. It's bao, by the way, in case you're wondering. For whoever watches to this point, if you are watching all the way to this point, thank you. I appreciate, you are so appreciated. I mean that. Because you get to hear about this upcoming stuff simply by watching to this point. Now, last reminder, you already know what I'm gonna say. Click the link and go vote for me for best food video if you really love me. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter and all that good stuff. The B-roll song is out in case I haven't said it enough, so the link is down there as well. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.